Hello, Sarah of SEK Handmade here, and I'm so excited to be back today to talk to you about gauge. This is the 5th video in the series. If you are joining me for the first time today, I'm going to link the playlist down in the description below. Lots and lots of great information about gauge in all of those videos. I encourage you to go back and give them a watch from the beginning so that you can deepen your understanding of gauge and make the best projects possible. All right, last time we talked about what do you do once you've met gauge and made an amazing swatch. I was going to say perfect, but the reality is there is no perfect gauge swatch. You are human. The designer was human. We are not perfect. We are human. And so there's always that human factor of imperfection that makes, I truly believe, makes handmade so special, but also makes our stitches unique and special and frankly, imperfect. So anyways, last week we talked about what if you make a great gauge swatch, now what do you do? This week we're going to talk about what if you never make a great gauge swatch? Friends, oh man, this is just the reality sometimes, and it can feel so defeating. But I have some good news. One, I just want you to take a deep breath. If you've made lots of gauge swatches, let me tell you, sometimes the best thing you could do for yourself is just to walk away. As I said in my previous videos, emotions and stress can absolutely play into your stitching. And so sometimes it's best to just walk away. But the other reality is that sometimes close is close enough. So that's what we're going to talk about today. All right, we've made lots of gauge swatches. We've taken a deep breath, maybe walked away and come back. And we're going to make a decision. Do we continue to look at those factors from my third video that affect gauge and make changes? Or are we going to say that close is close enough and go forward? If you decide that close is close enough, that's totally fine. I do want you to keep in mind the two main reasons that we gauge swatch. One, fit. If you're looking for a non-specific fit, close could definitely be close enough. The other thing is yardage. If you have plenty of yarn and you're not worried about running out, or you know you can easily get more, close may absolutely be just fine. Let's talk about the reality that I'm sure if you've done a lot of gauge swatching, you've stumbled across at some point. And that is, what if no matter what you've tried, different hooks, different yarn, trying to adjust your physical stitches with the golden loop and all the things, what if you can meet stitches dead on and not row height, or you can meet row height dead on and not stitches? You can get one or the other, but not both. First of all, I want to say that is not uncommon. I have been on many tests where there is several people who can do one or the other. Do not stress about this. This has to do with the human factor. You are not a failure. It is totally normal. The thing to keep in mind, though, is deciding which is more important. If you've decided close is close enough, you need to decide, is it more important to get row height accurate, or is it more important to get number of stitches accurate? The thing you're going to want to think about is row height is going to affect how tall your pattern is, and number of stitches is going to affect how wide or the circumference of your final project. If you are working a hat in a stiffer stitch pattern, you're probably going to want to go with stitches, because if your hat is gigantic or your hat is too small, neither of those things makes for a very comfortable hat. And a lot of times, adjusting the height of a hat is just making the brim smaller, leaving the brim off, leaving out a couple rows in the stitch pattern. So a lot of times, especially in simpler patterns, the width and the circumference of things are both more important to the fit and harder to adjust. I hope that makes sense. So personally, if you need to make a choice based on your project that you're making. You may be making a table runner and you may want it to be a specific length, but the width isn't as important to you. In that case, row height may be the thing to go with. So you just need to think about how those different measurements affect your final sizing and what is most preferable to you. So we've talked about close being close enough, but what if close isn't possible? What if you are limited to your yarn choices and you've tried them and you're just not making gauge? It is still possible to make something that fits well, like a garment or a hat, even if gauge is off by quite a bit. This takes some mathing. So you need to think about how big are your stitches, and if you multiply that measurement by the number of stitches in the finished item, how big are you going to end up? I have done this I gauge swatched for a sweater. I'm not even joking, like 5 times. And I eventually decided that I had gotten it close enough. I really liked the way my swatch looked and felt. And so instead of knitting a large, which is what I would normally do, I knit a small. That's how far off I was. I'm knitting a small in this sweater because the number of stitches used in the small as compared to the size of my stitches gave me the size sweater I wanted. Keep in mind that this process, when your gauge is not even close, is more of an adventure. And so you are definitely taking risks if you decide to dive into a pattern with a gauge that is not close. The amount of yarn you need could be wildly different. And you need to think about what other measurements are affected by changing the size. So while the circumference, again, of the small with my gauge is the right circumference I need, the armhole depth might be off. I don't want to go too shallow in my armhole depth, or my sleeves are going to be way too tight. And that's going to ride up under my arm and be uncomfortable. But if you are willing to A, do some math, and B, go out on an adventure of making some adjustments on some patterns, having a gauge that isn't close is totally doable. The last thing I really want you to think about when making a gauge swatch that may or may not be close is fabric quality. When we are working to meet gauge, I think we often hyper focus on the size of the stitches and forget that what we're creating is the fabric of our final project. And if you meet gauge spot on, but that fabric is incredibly stiff, you may not want to wear a sweater that has incredibly stiff fabric. Conversely, if to meet gauge, you have to increase your hook size so much that you end up with a really flimsy fabric, and you're making something like a basket, if it has really flimsy fabric, that may not be the best situation for you. So even if you meet gauge spot on, I encourage you to look at the quality of the fabric that you're making when you gauge swatch in comparison to the project you're working on, and make a decision if those are a good match too. Congratulations on joining me through, I hope, all of my gauge videos. As you can tell, this is a deep and complex topic with lots of factors that can affect your gauge. I encourage you to just keep in mind that every new project and every new pattern can be a roller coaster of experiences. Some days you'll make the very first gauge swatch, it'll be spot on and you'll be rolling down the hill ready to go. The other days you can make several gauge swatches and never meet gauge spot on. This is all part of the adventure of crafting. I hope that you'll take time to experience yarn and practice swatching with a wide variety of fiber contents and sizes and hooks and all of those factors, and just see how they affect your final project. Each time you work with something new and different, whether it's a new fiber content, a new yarn, a new stitch pattern, you are building up your depth of knowledge, and you take all of that with you into your next project. So doing some swatching just for fun can be really, really valuable. I have a whole video where I try to convince you on the value of swatching, and I'll link that below too. And then some videos where you can swatch right along with me and learn some things, hopefully some new things about yarn. It's actually a lot of fun and much lower pressure than swatching to meet a specific gauge. Thank you again for joining me today. It has been really lovely sharing my knowledge of gauge with you. If you have any questions, I am always happy to chat about things. It is my goal to help you grow confidently in your craft, and I'd love to chat about it with you. Drop a comment below, or in the description is a sign up link for my newsletter. Sign up there, and then you can respond to any of those emails that I send you, and it's me answering all of those emails. I would love to chat. If you found this helpful, I would love if you would subscribe, turn on notifications, like this video, and share it with a friend. Thank you again for joining me today. I hope to chat again with you very soon. Happy crafting!